Hello, my name is Keith Elliott. Welcome to episode number 3 of FlipAgain development with React. Our goal is to create an app that will ultimately be available at flipagain.io. It's a flashcard app. I keep this in mind because it feels like we're going slow. That's okay, we're learning as we're going. And today we are working through a ToDo app and we're adding state. Last episode we began adding state and we will still be adding state in this one. Let's go. First, let's head over to a terminal and start our app. I'm in our root directory of the ToDo app that we have created in the prior 2 episodes. And let's go ahead and start it. Yarn redwood dev. This will kick off our development server, and we'll go look at the state of our app and see where we left off. It fires up at localhost 8910. And if you recall, last episode we created our remove button functionality. So if we are done washing the dishes, that can go away. So we created the button or the functionality to remove a to-do. So that works. And today let's start by, let's toggle done. That will be our where we will start. All right, so with that in mind, let's go fire up VS Code, grab another terminal from the root directory. I typically type code dot, which fires up VS Code in the current directory. And here we go. So in the prior episode, we left off just wrapping up the remove button, and I said I would go do a little file cleanup, and I did. I renamed the button files, removing the prefix to do, with the goal of making them generic, or at least create habits with the goal of creating components that are reusable. And so a more generic file name is one step in that direction. Let's go look at the remove button that we created just to get our sea legs on here. Pretty simple. We accept the props of ID and handle click. The ID is the unique identifier. Handle click is the handler that is passed from all the way from the ToDo app root, where the state lives, all the way down to our button, and our button calls the handle click function. And we can pop over to the root the root component I called ToDo app. Let's go there now, all the way up here. All right, so in the ToDo app, we have our default state, an array of to-dos, and we implemented this handler function where we handle the remove. And we pass the handler as an attribute all the way down through our component tree. Let's go pop over to our component hierarchy. We pass it from the ToDo app component into the ToDo table, down to the ToDo table row, and all the way down to our remove button. We called it delete here, but we'll call it remove. Okay, so that's what we did, and we just did a quick functional test. We see that it works. So let's go think through the toggle button. So toggle, we have this button down at, say, the bottom of our component tree. Our button, we will call it button complete. Oh wait, not complete. Button toggle complete. Toggle complete. And then up at the top of the app, we have our ToDo app component. And this is where the state lives. And if you recall, we lifted state up. State lives here. And down here in the button that gets clicked, we need a way to communicate up to the state. So there's essentially, call it glue code. Glue to help us communicate, an event that occurs down here in the button, all the way up to the app where the state lives. So let's go ahead and begin that task. Let's start here at the bottom. We'll kind of work our way back and forth and get these two talking to each other. So let's pop over and maybe right here, we can start here at the top. Let's write a simple handler function with just, say, a console log statement as we're working through the task of getting the state in the root app talking to the button. Okay, so we'll call it handle. We'll click a button. So I'm not a fan of prefixing or using the handle click prefix on function names if we're clicking a button. We'll handle click, and then we can give it a more descriptive name because we'll end up with, probably half a dozen of these. Handle click toggle complete. I'm a fan of long names. That's okay. We'll need to give it an ID, and we'll think about what else we will need. And at the moment, we'll just add a console log here. All right, so that's here, and then ultimately this handler needs to be passed all the way down to our, it's here now. We need to go down to ToDo table row, and then our ToDo toggle button right here. So we have, let's go, let's see, so we need to add, let's go open our toggle button. ToDo toggle done. And let's see, let me just rename this guy real quick. I prefer complete, so we will name this complete. And VS Code will update imports for us. We will accept that. It opens the file and it gives you the opportunity to update them before it saves it. So that one is fine. And we'll see if it opened any others. But in addition to that name, we need to, that's the folder name, and we need to update this button. Yes, that's fine. It looks like, save that. All right, so we renamed it. I'm always renaming files, just getting intuitive file names, which seems weirdly harder than it should be. Okay, so let's go check out our toggle complete button. We have an ID that we already had passed on through as a prop, and now let's add the handler here. In the button, I will give it a name just like in our previous button remove. The handler name within this button will be generic. I don't know if it really matters here, but nonetheless, again, we're trying to create habits to make it somewhat generic. So we've got a handle click button. What we will do is pass the very specific handler that handles the state update. But right here, it's a generically named button, and we or handler, and we will provide that to the onClick attribute, which provides a listener which executes the function that we give it when the button is clicked. This would work. Why don't we try this? So we will go ahead and just save it as is. This should work. It won't pass. We ultimately need to pass in the ID. So let's look at this base functionality. And look at the console log statement, and then we need to circle back here and update this. So I'll save it. It won't work yet though. If we hop back over here, if I go, let me open up console, Control-Shift-I, opens the Chrome DevTools. And what we will see here is our console log statement right here, ultimately. But we're not seeing it yet because we still need to keep wiring up the code here. So back to the component hierarchy. We're down in the button. Let's work our way up. So let's go to To-Do Table Row. To-Do Table Row is open. It needs to accept, similar to the handle click remove, we will accept a handle click toggle complete. And that we will pass here. We renamed this from done to complete. And we will give it handle click toggle complete equals function of the same name. I'll save it in VS Code, and Prettier adjusts it to make it pretty. Get a little red squiggly. I've got a naming problem I can fix real quick. Complete. Okay, so there we go. Just passing on the handler through as a prop. So we're working our way up the component hierarchy. We've updated our button toggle complete, updated the top to-do table row. Now let's go to the table. To-do table, open to-do table.js, Control-K-Z to zoom in here. And again, we'll pass in as a prop the new handler, and down here in the to-do table row component call, we add a new attribute. There we go. So that one's complete. So what was that? That was the table. So here we are in the table. Now let's hop back up finally to the app. To table app. So where we call the to-do table component, we will add this guy. Okay, so at the moment, I think we are good. So let's save it. We'll hop back over to the app. We'll click the button and we'll look at the console log within Chrome DevTools, and we should see our simple console log statement. So here we are. Toggle done. Hop over to DevTools, and I don't see it. Let's see what happened. All right, so what I typically do when I first encounter an error like this, when the functionality is not being implemented, when I'm working through called the glue code, I step through the app. So let's look at our hierarchy and just make sure that we're passing the property down through the component tree as expected, because because it is error prone. So we'll start at the top. Here in our to-do app, we pass the handler. So that worked, no problem there. And then we're passing it to the to-do table. Let's go look at the to-do table. In the to-do table, we need to accept it as a prop, and we did that here. And then we pass it on down through to the to-do table row component. So that part looks good. Let's go down to the to-do table row component. To-do table row, we accept it as a component or a property, and we pass it on down here, and I see what's happening. So if we pop back over to the to-do or the button toggle component or toggle complete, we have a couple things we need to clean up. Number one, we renamed this guy. And also, if you recall, I'm trying to be maybe a little too fancy, and I named it a generic name, handle click. However, in the to-do table row, I didn't name it correctly. And this is where TypeScript can come to help eventually. Part of what I'm doing, not horribly intentionally, but is I'm motivating us toward use of TypeScript, which is a tool that will help fix silly errors like this. But I think that did it. Let's see here. Toggle button complete. We did a quick rename. Okay, so let's give it a try. So pop back over here. There's nothing here. We should see a console log statement in the DevTools here after we hit the toggle done button, and we still don't have it. Let's see what's going on. Okay, I'm back. I took a break and fixed it. Now if we go pop over and click toggle done, our console log statement will appear. Just to prove it to you, when I click the button, we can see the little numbers tick. Okay, so I wish I had some super wise counsel for you, but I don't. I just moved on to the next button and implemented it. It worked, and took a break and came back, and it's all back in action. So I guess the wise counsel is if you're stuck, just take a break and come back with a fresh set of eyes. All right, so we'll keep, let me walk you through what we're looking at here. So we have the toggle button toggle complete, which accepts our handler, and our to-do app ultimately running toggle handler. Okay, so I went ahead and implemented the handle click move up just to give ourselves confidence that we can do this, or myself confidence. I'm going to implement, just call it the glue code for handle click move down. We'll pass it an ID, and we will simply log a console log again here in moving down handler. All right, and so our groove here, as we pop over to the component hierarchy, or up here in the app, we have a handler. The handler will ultimately be called by the onClick event attribute in the button move down. And so we need to pass the handler down. No problem. Why don't we start, we'll just start at the top. Pop back over. We have our handler handle click move down. Handle click move down equals handle click move down. Send it to the ToDo table. Let's go into the ToDo table. And here it is. We also need to we're passing it down into the row, but we also need to accept it in the props. All right. And now we need to pop over to the ToDo table row and accept it in the props. ToDo table row. Let's accept it in the props. And we will hand it on down to the button. We called it handle click here. All right. And now let's go down to the button. Button move down. I don't think I have open here. Let me go get it. Button move down. Here we go. Handle click move down, except we just call it handle click here. And in the button HTML, we give it an on-click attribute and pass the handle click button to it. All right, looks good. So the button now accepts the handle click method or handler. The ToDo table row sends the handle click method or handler to it. The ToDo table row accepts that handler in the props. So we'll pop back up to the ToDo table, which passes handle click move down as an attribute to the ToDo table row. It also accepts it as a property. And we'll move back up one to the ToDo app. The app passes the handler into the ToDo table. And the handler is defined here. Handle click move down. Okay, and I believe everything is saved. We're cooking. So now when we go back to our app, the DevTools here I will clear. When I click the move down button, we should see a little note. And I need you to work, and it works. Thank you. And moving down handler. All right, now we're back in action. Okay, so what we need to do now is actually implement the logic that moves the ToDo down in the list. And so let's go back to our handler and think about that. There's a couple, we have a few handlers here now to implement. And it will require array manipulation. And I have to take us to unit testing. It's not horribly complex logic, but when I implement logic like this, I do it with unit test. I am fairly new to React, but not new to coding in general, and a long time habit I've had is unit testing. So let me take us on a path to unit test a function that we will create to toggle the button. Okay, so let's do it. All right, when I'm starting something new, I always need to sketch. So we'll create unit tests. We will use Jest. Jest is a unit testing tool, but it's built into, it's within Redwood. Run out of space. All right, so let's go look. If we head over to our I'm in our root directory of our ToDo app. And if we execute this, a command called yarn redwood test, it will run unit test. I did a little digging. I haven't dug too hard, nor did I take the Redwood or work through the Redwood unit test tutorial, of which there is one, but I simply haven't done it yet. I simply read the docs, yarn redwood --help, and essentially it integrates, Redwood integrates Jest. And what it's doing is it's running through the tests that are created automatically when we create a component using Redwood. And we haven't touched those, and most are just working, one of them is failing. But we won't go there just yet. We will simply focus on the tests that we are about to create. And so what I'd like to do, let's think about the name of let's create a utility function. And it'll be called toggle complete. And let's give it an ID and the to-dos. The ID of the item to toggle and the to-dos array. And it will return a new array. All right. So let's, and we'll do it, we could do it right inside the ToDo app component, but I don't want to. A good habit, or habit that I stick to, is I create a utility a folder with utility functions in it. So let's do that. So here, new folder, I will call it util. And in util, I will create a new file, and I will call it toggle complete.js. And we'll, here we are in our new file. Function toggle complete, give it an ID and the to-dos, and it returns, and we will implement this, and ultimately return, we return a new array. For now, I'll just return the existing array. It's fine. And this, I need to look. Let's look at one of the existing components and see how they, just look at let's look at this. This is what I'm looking at. How are we exporting the function? We simply define it up above, and they use arrow notation. I'm using the other function definition style. And then it's simply prefix export and default in front of the name to default it out of this module. Okay, so here we are. Export default toggle complete. The function name here does not start with an uppercase, as is the custom with JavaScript in general, but components begin with an uppercase letter. Just a little note. So we will implement this. We will also we can describe what it does as well. First of all, let's head over to Ramda. So a library that I'm a fan of is called Ramda. It's a tool with functional programming style tools to help with things like array manipulation. So let's go check it out. Ramda. It's a library with a functional style, and you can read about it. It's my go-to library. I would imagine that the underscore library has similar tools, but I've been a fan of Ramda, so I will use it. Let's pop back over to our whiteboard and we'll think through the implementation of this. So toggle complete. So number one, we need to, let's get our to-do object. We need to pull it out. We'll need to make a copy of it. Create a copy because we don't mess with the existing state. We always make a copy. We update our copy. And let's put it back. Or it's, I guess we don't put it, yeah, well, we could say we put it in a new array. Okay, so let's first start here. Let's get an object. There is a method called find in Ramda, which returns the first element of the list. Oops, lost it. Returns the first element of the list which matches the predicate, or undefined if no element matches. Predicate is a fancy word for a function that returns a true or a false based on whether it's a match. So let's open it in the REPL, and we can run. I often come here and can work through logic in this neat little user interface. All right, so they have an array defined for us with a collection of objects. and they are looking, and we look for, using r.find, we look for a array with a property of a equal to 2. And this may not look familiar to you. We'll start with maybe something that might look a little more familiar. X. We could use simply an arrow function here. The first argument is what's called the predicate, which is a method that returns true or false based on whether our object is a match. So if our object is called x and we want x dot a, or the property a equal to 3, then that could be our predicate function, and we would pass in x's, and we would see in the output here our object of interest, which is right here. So that's the theme. I tend to adopt their style instead of this style of defining the method to search for the object of interest. I will use their property called, or method called prop equals. We can go look at that also. Prop equal returns true if the specified object properties equal in r.equals terms to the given value, false otherwise. All right. So just to be in the habit of using their tools, I will use it. And so that will look like r.find, r.prop equals, if I'm looking for the property a with a value of 3, then this is it. This is the function of interest, and I'm passing in as the next argument the to-dos array. One note, you will also see that it's written in this style. Our functions are curried, which allow you to partially define them and pass in the last argument in a fashion that looks like this. So it's a rabbit trail to chase if you're interested. I'll stick to the typical style that we're used to. Okay, so this here's the code that will allow us to find or get our to-do object. All right, and once we have it, we create a copy. Just sketch it here, const my copy. Well, let's do this. Let's put our constant, we'll call it the original object. In my copy, we will use spread notation to create a copy. And we can look at the copy, and it will be output here. And if you recall, we can follow the spread notation with another property, for example, to add a new property, or even overwrite a property like so. Okay, so that's how we can create our copy. And update our copy. And now we need to put it back into the new array. Let's think about how to do that. Ramda has a function called update. Let's check it out. Update. Update returns a new copy of the array with the element at the provided index replaced with the given value. So in their example, well, let's expand the parameters here. So we pass it the index to update, the value to exist at the given index, and then the array. Okay, so if we use r.update and pass it the index position of the to-do object being updated, the new to-do object that we just created, and then the arrays, it will return our new to-dos list. So let's go practice here. We will practice r.update. r.update, again, if we give it an index position, say 0, and then a new item, and pass in the x's, as I finish, once I type s here, it will run this command, and the index position will change. Instead of a:1, we will have a new item, like we see here. Got it. Okay, so to do this, we will need to know the index position of our item. So just like we found, where did we do it? Right here. We found our to-do object and returned the object. There's also a function to return the index of the item of interest. So let's check that out. Original object index equals find index. And we'll output that. And that, let's see, the third, we are looking for a equal to 3, and that is 0, 1, 2, the second index position. All right. Okay, so now with the index, we can update our array. So we have all the pieces to do all of this. And now let's go ahead and do it. Let's see, we will implement, first of all, let's just implement it. And there's a good recommended style called test-driven development where we write the unit test first, but since we haven't even figured out how to do that, let's do this. We'll cheat. We'll write the implementation first, and then we'll go back and unit test it. But then we'll get in the habit of writing tests first. Okay, so again, let's get our to-do object. To get our object, we'll say const original orig to do equals, we need to import Ramda. We will import it as r Ramda dot find, and we will use r dot prop equals, give it the property name of ID, pass in the variable ID, and then pass in the to-dos. Okay, so let's update or import Ramda. We will ultimately import, what is it, star as r from Ramda. But we haven't, it doesn't yet exist in our setup here. So let's do this. We'll go to a new terminal, and the command is, if we head over to Redwood.js, redwoodjs.com and zoom over to the tutorial. In the Redwood file structure section, we see how to add a new package. Yarn workspace web add, and then the package name. And this is in contrast to npm install, which is very common with the Redwood folks who use Yarn. So let's go implement, type that out, yarn workspace. Web is the side where we are working, and Ramda. And it's doing its thing. It's adding a lot. It looks like maybe it's refreshing other items. Okay, that just wrapped up, and we see that we have now Ramda installed. So this should be working. So we grabbed our original to-do. Let's, what's next? Create a copy. We will create a copy using the spread notation trick, and as Ramda was being loaded, I hopped over to MDN to brush up on the use of the spread operator in object literals. So for example, if you have one object, object 1 and object 2, and you want to clone an object or make a copy, you can simply do it in this fashion, ... object 1 gives you a new object, and you can do that. You can merge objects, and you can overwrite chunks of the object. So the object 1 has an X property equal to 42. Yep, just right here. And let's see. Well, anyway, you can overwrite individual properties, as we'll see. Yeah, that's what we will do right now. All right, so to-dos, Control Enter, Control Shift Enter, pops me back up. So so we have the original to-do. We'll create an updated to-do equals orig to-do, and then our ID, or not the ID, but it is complete, and this will equal not the orig to-do is complete. Okay, so we simply set the new, using the spread operator, we make a copy of the original to-do, and we overwrite the is complete property, setting it to the original to-do in is complete, bang, so the opposite of what it is. And if I hold down Shift and hit space, what is it? I don't know what it is, but if we start typing out the property name, we see a list of the properties here. Well, anyway. Okay, cool. So anyway, we've made our copy. When we got the copy, we created the copy, and all in one fell swoop here, we updated the copy, and now we need to put it back into our new array. To put it into our new array, we need to use the Ramda update function, and if you recall, we need the index, orig to do index equals r dot find index. And we will use r.prop equals ID, to-dos. Oops, not that. To-dos. Okay, so there's our index. And finally, we can do it in return statement. Return r.update. R.update returns a new copy of the array with the element at the provided index replaced with the given value. So the first item is the index, orig to-do index, and then we need the array, or excuse me, the new to-do. What's the updated to-do? And finally, the original to-dos array. Finally, we have our guy, and this imported by mistake. Okay, so this is now our toggle complete function, and we need to test it. This is about as much coding as I like to do without testing. So let's implement a test. Let's pop back over in the style of, if we look at one of the components, our friends at Redwood.js define the component, and then alongside it, the component name.test.jest. And we'll look at this to serve as an example. And so we'll simply copy this, just because the syntax is a bit peculiar. This is jest syntax. And let's, in our util folder, we will create a new file called toggle complete.test.js. Let's pop paste our contents in and update it. Update this boilerplate. So to input is our function. I'll highlight it and then hit Control D to multi-select, and we'll change this to toggle complete and escape out of multi-select. So we will ingest. Okay, I'll resist the urge to go there, but if you Google jest JavaScript testing, you can learn about it. Essentially, we describe chunks of functionality and embed a callback function, which includes yet another, call it a chunk. So we describe an overall, say, function, and we describe what it does. So toggle complete renders successfully. Or we'll say it updates a to-do successfully. And then within this callback, you run these expect functions, which actually, this is specific to, let's just zap all this. And then this is where you actually perform the test. So we can say, oh, let's see. Well, for now, let's just say expect 2 to be 2. All right, so this is a successful test. It's just a toy, but it will run, and we'll see if it works. So let's just try it. So I'm going to save it. If we look back at our test output. These guys are running. And we will filter it down to only run our util test so that we don't have to wait to run these guys. So our test just ran, and we can see our toggle complete test ran successfully as well. So the whole setup's working. Let's hit W. We'll figure out how to filter. So press P to filter by a file name. So P, and the pattern will be util, and now it will only run test in the util file or folder, and it's passing. Just to show you this, if we expect 2 to be 3 and save it, it will fail. So it's running and it failed, and it shows us where it failed. All right, we got to wrap this up. I think we may call this slow coding with Keith. I feel like I'm curiously slow, but we're getting close. Let's implement this test and pop it into the handler and watch our toggle. So we're getting there. So first of all, in the unit test here, we need to run the toggle complete function. So we need initial to-dos. Okay, so our to-dos we defined in our app. Where was it? Right here. So all these to-dos, let's do this. Let's pull these out so we can reuse them and not copy them. Copy it here. Let's create another util. New file, we'll call it default todos.js, and I will paste them in here. Const default to-dos and export default to-dos. Okay, so this is it's just a constant containing an array, and we're exporting it. Let's import that into test, and that will look like this. Import default to-dos from /default to-dos. Just for kicks, again, just to see if all the glue here is working, let's log out a statement here. Are the default to-dos. Default to-dos. So I saved it. The test should be running, and we should see a logging statement. Yeah, here we go. So we've got our to-dos. Good. And let's run them through our toggle complete. So our toggle complete method will return a new const new, say updated to-dos equals toggle complete. We'll pass it, so we pass it an ID and then the to-dos array. The ID can be, we'll update the first one, how's that, and then give it the default to-dos. And our first test, so we should be in action, back in action here. Well, let's just test that this is an array. So we'll say array is array updated to-dos to be true. So this should be an array, and we can run a bunch of these expect functions in more to get more detailed tests. But I save that, it's running, it should just work, and it passes. Okay, so we really need to inspect. All right, we're going to cheat. We'll tighten up the test and add more tests later, but I feel like we need to wrap this session. Here are the, so we'll just look at it, and we'll add more detailed tests later. Updated to-dos. I saved it. So what we should see when we look at the output is that the item with the ID of 1 has gone from complete or not complete, however it's set up. So initially, walk the dog was is complete false, and now is complete is true. So yay, it works. Okay, so we have this function, toggle complete. We tested it. We can go back and add more robust tests later. But finally, let's go back over to our app. We need, when we click this button, to see that it's complete. So we'll go to the handler and update that. That's up in the to-do app. I need to clean up and remove what I just yanked out of here, but we'll do that in a little bit. So here in our handler, we need to set to-dos to toggle complete ID and then to-dos. And we need to import toggle complete. And that is, oh boy. Guess it's going to be, we'll just try it here. Import toggle complete from, where are we? I think we need to go up, out of the components, up one to the source, back into the util, and into toggle complete. Yeah, it looks like it's seeing it. Okay, I saved it. So now we imported our function. We added the function right here. We send to the function the ID that we passed in, the to-dos, which is our state function or state item. We pass the result of that into set to-dos, which will update it. And in this case, I don't think we need to update the way it outputs. I don't think it will break, but it also doesn't do anything. The data is changing, but we're not showing anything. So let's go to the way we render it, which is going to be in the to-do table row. And right here, we will say, we'll use a question mark colon operator, the ternary operator, to say to-do is to-do.is complete question mark. If to-do is complete, then we'll simply show some output here. Otherwise, we'll show no output. Okay, so this is just a rudimentary initial way to show our complete status. Okay, let's go back here. Ta-da! It worked. Super fun. We're done, we're done, we're done. Okay. All right. Well, this is a good time to wrap up. We are adding state, adding functionality to our app. We are doing it in the fashion called the first way to do it that we learn and are coached on in the Thinking in React article. We started with a mock, we chunked it, created our functions, built a static version first, created some minimal state, and then we put the state up in the app. We talked about how there's a little bit of inverse data flow where we execute on change or on click event handlers, and we need to pass those handlers as props all the way down through, and that's it. So we're not done here. We'll keep going through it, but this is a way to do it. There's multiple ways to do it. This is a way to do it. There's a lot of details in the mix. We dipped our toe into Ramda, a tool. We need some kind of tool for array manipulation. We used that. We had to figure out how to import or load the package. It wasn't that big of a deal, but it's something else to figure out. We figured out how to, then we threw in testing with Jest. It's built into Redwood, and so that was fairly straightforward. And we created our first unit test. It's quite rudimentary, but we can build this up later. So looking ahead, let's go back to our to-do app. We need to remove the initial to-dos. We'll import the defaults that we created. And let's go implement these handlers and ultimately the balance of our functionality. Remove, edit, and add to-do. Okay, well, I'm enjoying it. Hope you are too. Again, it's slow coding with Keith, but we're learning as we go, and that's my experience. I'm slow, but we will get faster with practice. Okay, have a great day.